No surprise, but the Raiders are already being connected to multiple quarterbacks that are going to be available on the open market. Plus, are you serious, unserious, or for entertainment purposes only? That plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for February 17th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome here, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, that's great. If you're checking us out on the YouTube page, that's also great. We do appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day. That's because you, Raider Nation, checking in each and every day, showing your support, and because of the job that my man Ari does behind the scenes on the YouTube page, making sure we're looking good and sounding good each and every day. We shout him out because we appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. Your calls and texts, we'll get those on the show. As a matter of fact, segment number 3, as we close things out, that's what you'll hear from. You'll hear from Raider Nation, your calls and texts. Again, 707-654-4693. Go ahead and lock that in your number. Anytime you want to be a part of the show, don't hesitate to reach out. Segment number 2 should be a lot of fun. My guy, Joe Fortenbaugh, my new tag team partner on ESPN Radio, part of the show, Joe and Q on ESPN Radio from noon to 3 Eastern Time, 9 a.m. to noon Pacific Time, had a really good statement when we were talking about the Dallas Cowboys, and he brought up 3 categories of teams: serious teams, unserious teams, and for entertainment purposes only. Yes, we were talking about the Cowboys, but we brought it around to talk about the Raiders. So I had him on my radio show on Friday, Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, to kind of break it down and talk about what he thinks about the silver and black. So you'll hear that. I'll give my points coming up in segment number 2, serious, unserious, and for entertainment purposes only. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and it's already some connections with some quarterbacks that are going to be available. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So off top, Champ Kelly, assistant GM of the Silver and Black, interviewed for the Jags GM job on Friday. They tweeted out, "We've completed an interview with Champ Kelly for our general manager position. This concludes our virtual interviews. We'll begin in-person interviews next week." So that was Friday. That was Valentine's Day when assistant GM Champ Kelly had an opportunity to interview for the Jags job. And yeah, the Jags GM job is still open, which blows my mind. Right? It's already mid-February, and they still don't have a GM. You want to talk about doing things backwards, which I'm so glad the Raiders did not go about this process the way that the Jaguars are. They've completely fumbled this whole situation. They still don't have a GM. They're supposed to be going through their roster, deciding who they're going to hold on to. They're supposed to be getting ready for the combine. They're supposed to be, getting ready for the draft, free agency, all that stuff. They don't even have a GM, and they have a brand new head coach in Liam Cohen. So clearly they're behind the 8 ball. When it comes to Champ Kelly, I root for him. I cheer for him. I know he's going to be a GM of his own team sooner rather than later. The Jaguars are not the team that I'd want him to get his first opportunity, and does not look like he's going to get his first opportunity with the Jaguars. But sooner rather than later, you will hear Champ Kelly as a GM of some team. The Jaguars also tweeted out over the weekend the finalists. The Jaguars have announced the finalists for their GM job: Chicago's Ian Cunningham, the Rams' James Gladstone, Green Bay's John Eric Sullivan, their own assistant GM Ethan Wall, and San Francisco's Josh Williams. Those in-person interviews will begin on Wednesday. So Champ Kelly did not make the final cut. Looks like he was one of those interviews that, you listen to, you sit down. He also checks a box as far as the Rooney Rule goes. But again, I'm not going to slight Champ Kelly like that, because I do know that he's going to have a GM job sooner rather than later. I don't know when, but I know when the Raiders got him as assistant GM, many people I know and respect around the league said, hey, that's a guy to look out for. He will get a GM job sooner rather than later. So I hope that it's sooner rather than later. And if he's still under contract with the Raiders when he does get that, that also means that the Raiders would get compensatory picks as well. But again, at the end of the day, I just root for the guy to be successful. Now, when it gets to the quarterback position, obviously that's going to be a hot subject for the Raiders all offseason, or until they get a quarterback or two. They're already being connected. I say it all the time that the Raiders are always going to have their name associated with everyone who's a free agent, everyone who's available, anyone who may be obtainable by way of trade. Their name is always going to be associated. It just makes it a little bit more sexier. But when it comes to the quarterback position and they don't have one, their name's definitely going to be associated. How about this? And these two reports come from some internet aggregators that are out there, on Twitter, the ones like the Dove Climans. It's not from them, but from people like that just kind of put stuff out there, reports out there, and hope that it runs. And so they always tag me in their tweets, and so I always get so much of it on my Twitter timeline, and I really don't like it. I try to mute them or I remove the tag because, again, it's just trying to get clicks, and it's trying to get retweets, and it's trying to get feedback. And I mean, what they're made for, they do. But this is the two that came out over the weekend. Projection: free agent quarterback Sam Darnold is projected to sign a 4-year, $170 million contract with $100 million guaranteed. Sam was a Pro Bowler this season, had 102.5 passer rating. The Vikings, Giants, and Raiders are expected to show significant interest. Now, I'll stop there. I think that's a lot of money. I'm not saying that the Raiders aren't going to have any interest in Sam Darnold. Many people that I've talked to have said that the Raiders should have interest in Sam Darnold. I do not. I don't think that Sam Darnold would be a very good fit with the Raiders. I think he's a guy that's had 1 year of success in Minnesota. Those kind of guys scare me. They've been in the league for how long that Sam Darnold's been in the league, and this is the first year he's had success. Does that mean that he's going to regress and not have that success moving forward? Not necessarily, but that's not who I'd want to pour all my money into. And when you look at a 4-year, $170 million deal with $100 million guaranteed, thanks, but no thanks as far as I'm concerned. But that's just me. Sam Darnold, I could see the Raiders having interest. I would hope that they wouldn't have interest at that rate of pay. But that's me. This is the one that really got me. How about this one? Free agent quarterback Russell Wilson is projected to sign a fully guaranteed 2-year, $80 million contract. Wilson was a Pro Bowler this season, led Pittsburgh to the playoffs. The Steelers and Raiders are expected to show significant interest. I mentioned Russell Wilson a long time ago. I would not at all have any interest in Russell Wilson. 2 years, $80 million contract, fully guaranteed. No way, no how. That is ridiculous money. $40 million a year, fully guaranteed. No, thank you. Russell Wilson ain't got that much in the tank for $80 million fully guaranteed. I get it. Maybe going to the Kirk Cousins school of, accounts and being able to get contracts because Kirk Cousins is the king of that. But no thanks, no way, no how. Right? 2 years, $80 million. Nope. I'll pass. So those are the kind of reports that you're going to start to see a whole lot of, especially until, everything really goes down and plays out and the Raiders get them a veteran free agent quarterback. They dip into the draft and get a quarterback, maybe a combination of both. You're going to continue to see that, or until, free agency opens up and these guys sign elsewhere for whatever kind of money. But I see no world where Russell Wilson signs a 2-year, $80 million contract, and I sure don't see a world with the silver and black. But again, that was out there over the weekend. And then this final one, shout out to Richie Incognito. And it's very rare that I'm talking about Richie Incognito, but we all know that he ended his career with the silver and black. He also had a very, checkered and troubled type career in the National Football League, especially when he was in Miami and was accused of the bullying of Jonathan Martin. Well, there was a really good report that I do encourage you to go read by my guy Omar Kelly from Miami Herald. It came out on Sunday, as a matter of fact. Jonathan Martin admits that Bullygate saga was built on a lie. So basically, as I read through it, and I do encourage you to go check it out. Again, it's in the Miami Herald by my guy Omar Kelly. The whole thing was basically made up. His mom helped make it up because he couldn't make it in the league, and they were trying to protect his money and basically created the whole Richie Incognito was a big bully and that he was bullied by the Pouncey brother, Mike Pouncey as well, and it just all kind of different elements of that story, if you remember it from many years ago, that really cost a lot of people, not only some part of their career, including Richie Incognito. Remember, it got suspended for 8 games by the league. Cost himself a lot of money, was out for a little while until the Raiders decided to sign him. And I remember when the Raiders signed him, a lot of us, including myself, was like, yeah, he's had some things in his past. And I'm not saying Richie Incognito is a saint by any matter, right? I mean, he's got his own issues. He's admitted that he had his own issues, but that was not one of them. It's a shame that whole thing, that whole narrative was out there. So if you do want to catch up and read up on it, Jonathan Martin admits the Bullygate saga was built on a lie by Omar Kelly from the Miami Herald. I'm going to try to get Richie Incognito on the show sooner rather than later, sometime this week maybe. I know that he doesn't necessarily want to talk about that, but now that it's out there, I've seen him tweeting about it and talking about, oh, surprise, surprise, hey, Adam Schefter, look, this was all false. These were all lies. There might be a time then he does decide that he wants to speak on it. Again, not going to push him, just going to ask if he could come on. So I'd love to get his side of the story now that it's actually out there that it was all lies, like he said it was many, many years ago. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, serious, unserious, or for entertainment purposes only. Where do the Raiders rank right now? Where did they rank before the offseason began? And how do they firmly entrench themselves in the serious category? That's all coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you missed the opening tip-off or want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And you know there's about 30 games left in the regular season. We saw the All-Star break, all the festivities over the weekend, including the new format, All-Star Game. Right now, new FanDuel customers could get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into the conversation, serious, unserious, or for entertainment purposes only. And this is something that my tag team partner, my new partner, Joe Fortenbaugh from Joe and Q on ESPN Radio, he was talking about the other day while we were doing the show. We did our first week last week. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully you were able to check it out. If not, if you get a shot, check it out, right? Noon to 3 Eastern time, 9 a.m. to noon Pacific time. Again, if you get a shot, click on ESPN Radio and you'll hear us. But we were talking about the Dallas Cowboys, and Joe brought up a great point, and it was such a great point that I asked him to be a guest on my radio show on Friday, on Valentine's Day, to talk about that as it relates to the Raiders. So we really started off the conversation. You'll hear a little bit from Joe Fortenbaugh. We really started off the conversation. I asked him about the different categories of teams, serious, unserious, or for entertainment purposes only. Those are the 3 categories that he has, but he explains it right now like this. Check it out.
It's fairly simple. There are the serious teams, which are obvious. Kansas City's a serious team. Philadelphia, Baltimore, Buffalo, San Francisco. They take their business seriously, and it shows. You don't necessarily have to win 12 games to be serious, but you need to be the type of team that goes about your business with a plan. Then we have the unserious teams. This would be the Cleveland Browns. This would be the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, by the way, still looking for a general manager candidate. Not sure who they're hiring there. I mean, the season only starts in like 3 days, but whatever. So you got that team, Tennessee, teams like that. You don't have to worry about these teams. They'll never be around at the end. Then there's category 3, for entertainment purposes only. These are teams that you don't need to take seriously because they're not going to contend for a title. You don't put them in the unserious category because they're actually out there making all types of noise and headlines, and they're very talkable. And that's the Dallas Cowboys. They are here for our entertainment. In any business, every competitor cannot be successful. It doesn't work like that in a free market. You have to have the good eating the bad. The market will weed out the weak. But in the NFL, you can't just make teams disappear. So the good teams will just essentially make the bad teams bad teams. And that's who the Dallas Cowboys are. They're here just to entertain us. It's no surprise that 2 days after the Super Bowl was over, they've all started taking turns talking. It's Dak on Wednesday. It's Micah on Thursday. Jerry's probably up Monday to get us going again. But that's how they handle their business. For entertainment purposes only, not to be taken seriously.
So, Joe, as we fast forward this and look towards the Raiders, how do Pete Carroll, Tom Brady, John Spytek, how do they take the organization and turn them into a serious team?
So previous to this offseason, they absolutely were unserious.
Okay.
Like, absolutely. They were the poster child for the unserious category. And I followed them for a while when I was covering them in Las Vegas. Mark Davis, try as he might to make good decisions, for one reason or another, they wouldn't work out. General manager hires, coaching hires, player personnel, I mean, you name it. They just could not figure it out. But this offseason is very interesting. Tom Brady comes in as a part-time owner. That's a serious guy. Not part-time, partial owner.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll comes in as a head coach, a man with a lot of success. Now, say what you want about his age. The thing about Pete is he's a successful guy with a proven track record. The Raiders don't do that a lot when they hire head coaches, right?
Right.
Like, this is a pretty big get for them. So right now, when I look at how they're handling their business, I'm starting to take them seriously. It doesn't mean they're going to win, but I do take them a little bit more seriously. Got to get yourself a quarterback, and you got to continue to build out the roster. It's going to take some time, but just show the people that you have a plan, right? If you come away from this draft with no quarterback, and you come away from free agency with no quarterback, what are we supposed to think about you going into this year? Because I'm pretty sure Raider fans have heard, just give us a year, just give us some more time, more often than they'd like.
So that was Joe Fortenbaugh. Again, he was part of 95.7 The Game in the Bay Area, was able to cover the Raiders, obviously cover the Warriors as well. He's been here in Las Vegas, so he covered the Raiders there as well. But just a really good on-air personality, really good on-air talent, and has a lot of really good points, including the one he brought up. Serious, unserious, and for entertainment purposes only. And he put the Dallas Cowboys in the entertainment purposes only conversation. You don't want to be a team in that conversation, right? You don't want to be one of those that just talks a lot, tries to steal the headlines, gets everyone to talk about you, but you're not doing anything in the league. You're literally for entertainment purposes only. That's the Cowboys. And you heard what he said about the Raiders. Up until this offseason, they were unserious. They were the poster child for unserious. They were making decisions that weren't serious type decisions, right? I mean, they were putting coaches in place that didn't have the right experience. Like, we know what it was, Gruden 2.0. We know what Mark Davis was attempting to do. It didn't work out. Brought in Josh McDaniels, not a track record of winning football as a head coach. That didn't work out. Hiring Antonio Pierce, as much as I wanted him to hire AP, I thought that was the right decision. He had no track record outside of the interim games, right? And being able to turn things around there. So now they go out and hire Pete Carroll, who has a track record of winning, right? Has championships under his belt, not only Lombardi, but also a national championship in college. So obviously he's got a serious resume. And I thought the point he made about Tom Brady, he's very serious, right? Very serious as not a part-time owner, but a partial owner, right? And that makes a lot of sense. And so you see the hires that they've made, right? They go out and get Pete Carroll. Again, we already know his resume. They go out and sign and hire Chip Kelly to be the offensive coordinator. They give him $6 million a year. If that's not a serious commitment, I don't know what is. Keeping Patrick Graham as the defensive coordinator, showing that commitment, giving him a raise, that's serious. That's letting it be known that, hey, we want to do some really good things. Now, to stay in that serious conversation, like Joe said, this offseason they've made serious moves, right? Not saying that they're going to win right now, not saying they're going to make a playoff push or go hoist a Lombardi. What they have to do is get a quarterback. We've talked about it, and we're going to talk about quarterback. They have to make the right decision on the quarterback. And going and signing Sam Darnold for a ridiculous amount of money would not be a serious move. That would be being a recency bias victim, right? Seeing what you saw up close and personal, whatever the case may be for this 1 year, and saying, okay, that's going to translate to what we have going on. I like to believe what has been out there consistently. Sam Darnold has consistently not been a very good quarterback. He was this year, but throughout the course of his career, he has not. So going out and making the right decision at quarterback would be making a serious move. Also, and I know we've discussed Max Crosby and how much does the organization value him as far as what kind of guaranteed money they want to put on his deal, because he has 2 years left on his deal, but no guaranteed money. Getting a deal done with Max and getting it done pretty quickly and getting that guaranteed money that he's looking for, that would be a serious sign, right? Regardless of how you feel, I would like to see him make more game-changing plays. I think he would like to see him make more game-changing plays, knowing Max the way that I do know Max. But going out and showing that they're committed to a guy like that, and going out and showing that they're committed to a guy who does everything the right way, shows up early, works his tail off, and has a commitment to wanting to win and be a part of a winning organization, that would be a serious sign. The Raiders have to do this offseason, John Spytek, Pete Carroll, and company, they have to continue to make a series of serious decisions that are right? Don't get too crazy on whatever veteran quarterback you get in. Don't, get too crazy when it comes to the draft. And if you want to go get like a Shador or Cam Ward, don't give up the farm, right? Don't play yourself, right? Just go ahead and give up everything just to move up a couple spots to go get your guy, right? It has to be a smart, shrewd business decision. And you have a lot of cap space, right? Like Albert Breer said, he expects the Raiders to be big spenders. Don't just go throw money like you're at the club and you're trying to make it rain, right? Make smart business decisions. Sign free agents that make sense. Sign free agents, as we talk about all the time, right? Not guys that you're giving them money based off what they've done in their career, but what they could still do, right? Guys that are still young enough to be productive players, right? And you feel really good about them. Like a Christian Wilkins. I think everyone felt really good about that decision last year. Unfortunately for Christian, he got injured and wasn't able to finish things off. But I think everyone pretty much felt good. And if you go back and look what the Raiders did under Tom Telesco as far as free agency, they didn't really sign a whole lot of players. They didn't, it was Christian Wilkins and Gardner Minshew for the longest. Then they, got a guy here, got a guy there, but they were all minor deals, right? So they have to be smart. Even though they have plenty of money, they just can't go out there and get crazy. So John Spytek's got to make good, smart decision to stay in the serious conversation. It's good that they're in the serious conversation. They don't need to be in the news. They don't need to have their quarterback talking, their star wide receiver talking, Max Crosby, talking to everybody about this, that, and the third, and how he's angry and what they have to do as an organization. They don't need that. They don't need to snatch headlines, but what they need to do is be smart, be quiet, and make a lot of smart, serious decisions. But I thought that was a really good breakdown from Joe Fortenbaugh. Serious, unserious, and for entertainment purposes only. The Raiders were firmly in the unserious conversation. This offseason so far, they've made a series of serious, smart decisions. They have to keep that up. It's good to see and hear the Raiders from someone on the outside are in the serious conversation. Can they keep that up throughout the course of the offseason and field a team in 2025 that is truly serious? You don't want them to be for entertainment purposes only, and you don't want them to be unserious. What's on your mind? 707-654-4693. If you'd like to feedback and respond to what Joe had to say about serious, unserious, and for entertainment purposes only, we'd love to hear from you as well on that. We'll get that on tomorrow's show. Again, 707-654-4693. Segment number 3, your calls and texts, is coming up next. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a text from Jeff in South Carolina. Hey, Q, it's Jeff from South Carolina. First off, love the podcast. Listen to it daily to get my morning started. My question is to do with, surprise, surprise, our quarterback situation. Listening to the interview with the Seahawks dude on Thursday made me think, if Pete loves a mobile quarterback and everyone thinks that's what you need to win in today's NFL, why is Shedeur on the radar? Watching his tape and looking at his stats, this cat has a lot of good things, but mobile isn't one of them. He had negative 50 yards rushing last year. He's tough and accurate when he's in his groove, but he isn't going to break a run if a play breaks down. Am I missing something? Thanks. That's Jeff in South Carolina. Thank you for the text, Jeff. I do appreciate you. Thanks for chiming in. And, yeah, he can run. He has negative 50 yards because he took a lot of sacks, which is something he can't do in the National Football League. He's got to be able to get the ball out of his hands. When I talk about Shedeur and I say he has warts, his warts are he holds onto the ball too long trying to make plays. He's got to speed that clock up. But with his legs, he can move. He can pick up a first down. He can very easily do what Patrick Mahomes does. And what I mean by that is Patrick Mahomes doesn't make it look good. He doesn't make it look pretty, but somehow, some way, he picks up 5 yards. He picks up 7 yards. He picks up 15 yards at a first down. He could do that if he so chooses to. He doesn't really do it very often. And the other thing that I like about what Shedeur does, especially with his legs, is that he's able to scramble, keep plays alive, and keep his eyes downfield and deliver the ball. So a guy like Brock Bowers, boom, a guy like Big Mike, a guy like Jacoby Myers, a guy like Trey Tucker can leak out, right, and be able to come up with some big plays. So that's why Shedeur is part of the conversation. His accuracy is really good. His arm strength is good enough. It's not the strongest arm in the draft, but he has a lot of things to like. So, yeah, you're right. He's not a guy that's going to, do a whole lot of RPOs. He's not a guy that's going to, look like Lamar Jackson or run around the yard like that or even look like Jalen Hurts. But he can keep plays alive with his legs if so choose to. But the rushing yards that he had, the negative 50 in college, was because of the sacks that he took there at Colorado. So that's why he's part of the conversation. And, oh, by the way, Tom Brady knows him really well. So if the Raiders decide that that's what direction they want to go get, trust and believe the conversation started with Tom Brady and the way that he knows him so well. Thanks for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Eddie in Hollywood, Florida. Another Raider Eddie. Man, we got one in Denver. We got one in L.A. We got one in Hollywood, Florida. This is the one in Hollywood, Florida, calling to talk about the name he keeps hearing pop up and associated with the Raiders. And that's Sam Darnold, who obviously had a career year with the Minnesota Vikings. Here he is, Raider Eddie in Hollywood, Florida.
Hey, Q, what's going on, man? It's Raider Eddie out of Hollywood, Florida, calling in with an opinion on what I seem to be hearing a lot for quarterbacks in the Raiders. The name Sam Darnold keeps popping up left and right, everywhere I'm looking, along with a few others, but he seems to be the most popular linked to the Raiders. I'm struggling here to see what other people are seeing, maybe because I'm considering things others aren't considering. But when I look at his career, from my knowledge, it's the Jets and then Minnesota. And when you compare them and then you throw our team in there, I think our team much more aligns with the Jets than it does Minnesota, especially considering that Minnesota just made the playoffs. And if you go in a little bit further, you'll notice what I noticed. The offensive line for Minnesota is much better than the Jets, is much better than what we have in Las Vegas. the running game that they have in Minnesota is much better than what they had in New York and much better than what we have here in Las Vegas, in my opinion. And the skilled position players, wide receiver and tight end, who are catching the balls from Sam Darnold in Minnesota are much better than in New York and definitely here in Las Vegas. So what does this all mean? You put the team around the quarterback, and the quarterback can play well and make it look like he's better than he actually is. And if you take Sam Darnold away from all that talent on Minnesota, you put him back on the Jets, or you put him on our team, who is lacking talent, you're going to get the same results that you had before. He's not going to have a repeat of last year. I do not believe that to be true. And I'm just curious to know what your thought on that is, and what the rest of Raider Nation seems to think. I know it's one thing to admit our problem is quarterback. It's another thing to settle on mediocrity. You know, you've been saying it for a while now. It's okay to be good, but we want to be great. Sam Darnold ain't great. Sam Darnold ain't great. All right, so is this going to be the answer? Even if at a stopgap, I feel Aiden O'Connell can be the stopgap. And he's going to be cheaper than whatever we pay for it. We can spend that money on other talent that we really desperately need across the roster. It's just my opinion, my man. Q, always appreciate you. I will always support what you do, my man. I am definitely one of the first listeners. I listen to you every single morning on the way to work, Monday through Friday, without fail. Wish you the best, man. Hey, let's get a Raiders on 3, yeah? 1, 2, 3.
And then his time ran out. Really good call. I love how your time ran out just where it ran out. Like it was about to peak, and then boom, it was done. For anyone that doesn't know, the call only allows you to have 3 minutes. So if you start to feel like that 3 minutes is running out, you got to finish that bad boy up. You're not going to get any walk-off music or anything. It's just going to wrap it up on you like that one. But thanks for the call. I appreciate you, and I'm with you 100%. Guys that all of a sudden have careers, years, and then cash in, those are the ones to be scared about. Those are the ones to be concerned about, the ones that are just one-year wonders, right? I don't like the idea of Darnold at all. I know that there's plenty of people that will associate him with the Raiders, just like we had in segment number 1 where, you know, the aggregators out there were talking about the Raiders and the Vikings, and others Giants are going to be interested in them and all this. Look, the Raiders are going to be associated with every one of these guys until they get a guy, right? It's just what it is. I'm definitely not in that category, though. I'm 100% against Sam Darnold. I know my guy, Vinny Bonsignor, who I respect the hell out of. I know he's a Sam Darnold guy. He would have no problem with him. I know the morning tailgate on Raider Nation Radio 920, it's like all three of those guys between Clay, Vinny, and Vince are all like 10 toes down with Sam Darnold. And I don't see it. I just don't. So, you know, that's where we'll differ, right? They'll be in team Sam Darnold. I'll be in team, well, not Sam Darnold. How about that? But thanks so much for the call. I definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Shane in New York. Says, hey, Q, it's Shane from New York. I'm curious of your thoughts on wide receiver Ricky White III, a local UNLV guy, so I don't know if you had any insight or any opinion on him. I like his game. He put up solid numbers the last couple of years, regardless of quarterback play. I'd love to see the Raiders grab him with one of their third-round picks or maybe their fourth, but I don't know if he's still there by then. All love for you and Ari. Keep up the great work. That's Shane in New York. Shane, great text. Great tech. Ricky White is fantastic. Ricky White is a really good wide receiver. I'm so glad you brought him up. I've actually talked about him a few times. Not only is he a really good wide receiver, this dude blocked 4 punts in 2024. 4. That takes what? That takes want to. First of all, if you're a star wide receiver on the team, and he was a star wide receiver on UNLV's team, most of the time you're not out there on kick coverage, right, and attempting to block the kick. Right? I mean, you could be out there as a returner, but very rarely do you see him out there trying to go and block the kick. He wanted to be out there, and he blocked 4 of them, recovered a couple in the end zone for scores. The dude is a fantastic player. He really is. I don't know where he goes in the draft. I mean, early in the season, I felt like he was potentially like a first-round guy. I think maybe he's going to drop to the second or third. If the Raiders could get him with one of their third-round picks, that would be a great get. because that dude is a really, really good wide receiver. I'd love to see the Raiders find a way to get Ricky White. So that's some good deep diving on your part, Shane. Really good. I didn't think that I'd hear Ricky White's name popped up on the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, but here you go, Shane. A really good text. Thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. And when we get on the calls with Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper and Matt Miller and Jordan Reed and those guys, I'll definitely have to ask them about Ricky White and see what they think about where he can end up. Thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Louie. He's calling to respond to the quarterback list that we were talking about on Friday and had a name he wanted to throw out there that he thinks might be a good bridge quarterback. Here he is, Raider Louie.
Hey, Q, this is Raider Louie calling in from Escondido. I'm actually on my way back home, driving home from Vegas. I listened to the list of quarterbacks on today's episode, and honestly, none of those names really moved me. I get the connection with Justin Fields, but like you, I'm not too thrilled about him either. I wanted to throw a name out there that I kind of just glanced over a article online, and at first I didn't really think it was a good option, but then the more I thought about it, there's just a bunch of good points that might make it a good bridge quarterback for the Raiders, and that is Marcus Mariota. Being that he knows Chip Kelly's offense from his time in Oregon, and he had success under that offense. And I don't see him as a long-term solution, another bridge quarterback option. But there's a couple of points that I would think are to his favor. He has a really good connection with the Hawaiian community in Vegas. He's made that very clear in the past. He feels comfortable there. He's not going to be any trouble in the locker room. So he's going to be a good fit under the culture that Pete Carroll's going to establish. And last but not least, and I think it's the most important point, he is going to be willing to work with whichever rookie quarterback that you bring in and teaching them Chip Kelly's offense. So those are, I think, good points that bode well. I'm not sure if he's under contract with the Commanders, but I mean, a lower-end draft pick for him would be something I believe acceptable to bring him in and be that bridge quarterback. Let me know what you think about it, Q. Thank you for your platform. I love your show. And as always, go Raiders.
Louie, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I've heard Marcus Mariota before. My guy, Ryan Hogue, former Raider wide receiver, drafted Mr. Irrelevant back in 2003. He rocked with me all week long on Radio Row there in New Orleans. He was a co-host in this show and co-host in my show, and, I mean, just did a hell of a job. He brought up Marcus because of the connections with Chip Kelly. He does love Vegas, right? I mean, it's his family loved Vegas when he was here. He's a great dude, great teammate. I'm sure he would mentor a quarterback. I just don't know what he's got left in the tank. I don't know what he's got left as far as health. When he was with the Raiders, he never seemed to stay healthy. Even when he'd have a big play here, a big play there, he would all of a sudden come up, with some kind of injuries to his hamstring or something. I just don't know what's left at the table. I know that he wouldn't cost a lot of money. That's for sure. He is a free agent this year, so he could be a guy that they decide to sign and bring him in and let him compete with O'Connell and a rookie quarterback. He would be a true definition of a bridge guy, especially at the right price. I mean, going back to the conversation with Joe Fortenbaugh about serious, unserious, and for entertainment purposes only, if they could get something, if they were, shrewd enough and smart enough to be able to get him and actually, provide some competition, even if Aiden O'Connell wins the competition, he could still be a really good backup. That might be a good, serious type move for this team. So that's a good name to throw out there. We'll get the chance to talk to the head coach, Pete Carroll, and also the GM, John Spytek, the 27th, I believe, the late in February at the Combine. So we'll start to get an idea of what kind of, how they start to look at this team and start to put this team together, their plans on what a Pete Carroll and John Spytek-led team, what that looks like. But thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Got one more text. This is from Raider Jason in the 304. Howdy, Q. Raider Jason from the 304. First of all, congratulations on the new show. Love the story on the one sheet. Thanks for the coverage. That Super Bowl was more glorious than D-Day. Here's some comments on the potential newcomers. No Myles Garrett. As much as it'd be a fantasy defensive line with Wilkins, Garrett, and Crosby, our team can't soak up that much cap space on a D-line. Too many other needs. We need to trade up to get a quarterback. It won't cost that much capital to move up. 1, Cam Ward. 2, Shador Sanders. 3, Jackson Dart. Dart has a lot of upside and is under the radar. I don't think he'll make it out of the first round. No Aaron Rodgers. No way. Please no. No Russell Wilson. No Matt Stafford. No Sam Darnold. No Justin Fields. Maybe Sam Howell or Geno Smith as bridge quarterbacks. Sorry for the long text. I know there's a lot to unpack there. As always, love the show. Just win, baby. Go Raiders. That's Raider Jason in the 304. And thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. And yeah, that's the thing. You know, I mean, when you look at the draft and you look at Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, you know those two quarterbacks are going to be the first two off the board. But based off the other teams that are up there, Tennessee is really the one that's going to kind of set the tone for the draft. Are they going to go with a quarterback or are they going to go with a defensive player? If they go with a defensive player, then I would feel pretty good that the Raiders are going to have a chance to get Shedeur at number 6. If they go with a quarterback, then I feel like, all right, you better trade up to go get your guy if, in fact, one of those guys is your guy, right? But, again, the question is how much do you have to give up to go get there, and is that a good, smart move, or are you giving up too much and all of a sudden you're not a serious team, right? You make an unserious decision. Like that's, again, going back to the 3 categories, serious, unserious, and for entertainment purposes only. You don't want to start making a bunch of unserious moves after you've made some serious moves to start things off with. So, Matt Stafford, I wouldn't do that. That's a trade, and plus you have to give up money. Russell Wilson, I don't think that the money would be anything like we were talking about in segment number 1. I wouldn't have a problem with him as a bridge, but it would have to be very cheap. It would not be $40 million a year or 2 years for $80 million fully guaranteed. Like no way that would happen. That'd be a very unserious move. That might be an entertainment only purpose move, right? No Sam Darnold. I'm with you on that. Justin Fields, I'm starting to warm up to that idea of Justin, especially if it's like on a 1 or 2 year prove it deal, just so he can get out there and prove that he can be a franchise quarterback. I don't believe that he's a franchise quarterback. I don't trust his arm as far as consistently making the throws you need to make. I know he has really good legs. He's a very athletic dude. I'm sure he can do some damage in this Chip Kelly-led offense, but can he make the throw that you need to make consistently? That's where my big concern is when it comes to Justin Fields. But you mentioned Geno Smith. That would have to be a trade. Sam Howell, that could be a trade. I'm sure it wouldn't cost a lot to go get him, though. The Raiders have plenty of draft capital, so that would be okay. And obviously, Geno Smith and Pete Carroll have worked together and worked really well as Pete Carroll helped him get another contract there with the Seattle Seahawks. So there's a few options out there, that is for sure. But and Jackson Dart, I don't want to gloss over him. He's definitely a guy that's on a lot of people's radar now. He's getting a lot of attention. He's easily going to slide in as QB number 3, I do believe, and he very well might end up being a first-round quarterback and might not drop to round number 2. But we'll see. The combine will be big for him. Obviously, the pro days and, as they keep trending and the offseason keeps going along, you'll see how he keeps building his stock. That would be one Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. That's all I got time for on today's show. Got a call from Heavy D in Western New York. We'll get to it tomorrow. A text from Grim Raider from Fredericksburg, Virginia. We'll get that tomorrow as well. Plus, we'll have more news and notes. We'll have more conversation. It is President's Day. I have my show with Joe Fortenbaugh on ESPN Radio, noon to 3 today, Eastern Time, and 9 a.m. to noon. I do not have my local show on Raider Nation Radio 920. We all took the holiday off, but we'll be back obviously tomorrow. But we'll be back here, no days off on the podcast, right? We'll be back here as we are each and every week, Monday through Friday, here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.